Olá, devs! Meu nome é Jacob Moura e estamos aqui no canal do Flutterando. E dessa vez nós vamos ter uma entrevista com um dos cofundadores do Flutter, né, Eric Seidel, né? Nós iremos tratar de assuntos referentes à estrutura, como veio o Flutter e tudo mais, como nasceu o Flutter. E nós vamos ter aqui a entrevista totalmente em inglês, né? Para isso, nós vamos ter dois hosts, né, que vão ficar perguntando, né, para o nosso querido Eric, né, que é o André Baltieri, lá do balta.io, e o Cleverson, lá da IATech. Tá beleza? Então eu espero que vocês curtam a entrevista, tá bom? E é isso aí.
Hello, Eric. Let me introduce myself and my colleagues. Okay. My name is Cleverson. I am system architect for IATech. A few weeks ago, me and Jacob, we interviewed Emily Fortuna, and today we're here to interview you. By my side, I have Thiago. He's head of mobile department in IATech, and he's working directly with Jacob and the guys, working for an application here in IATech. So it's great to have you here. Jacob is the one managing the channel, Flutterando, and we'd like to welcome you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're very happy to have you here today. Andre, you want to say anything?
Hello. I didn't say it yet, but I did not introduce myself. I am André Baltieri, or Balta, if you want to know. It's Italian, so you need your hands to say my name, Baltieri. And I work with web development since 2005 and started with Flutter last year. I helped the guys with Flutterando, writing some posts, making some videos. That's it.
Pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you too.
Anyone else who wants to introduce yourself? No?
Me.
Okay. So, Eric, before we... What? Kelvin?
Yeah. Hi, Eric. I'm Kelvin. I'm a mobile developer here in Brazil at Smarter Code. And I'm working with Flutter about 8 months. So that's all.
Okay, Eric, we know you don't have that much time, but we appreciate that you took the time to talk to us today. So, without further ado, I'd like to start asking you some questions. But before that, can you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself, about your education, your technical education, and your career. A little bit about yourself, please.
Sure. So, you know me, I'm Eric Seidel. I started the Flutter project with a couple other engineers at Google. And let's see, my technical education. I sort of learned most of the things that I've learned about programming computers just by using programming in computers. I grew up in the middle of the country here in the United States, and there wasn't a lot of technical education where I was. So I sort of picked it up as I went along. I worked at Apple for a while, worked at Google, mostly on web browsers for much of the last decade before doing Flutter.
Okay, nice. We're gonna start asking you some questions. Okay. We have a script here. The first question we have for you is: will Flutter have 3D animations?
We currently have no plans to do 3D beyond what we have today. So today there is a concept of Z, and you can apply matrix transforms and get some sort of semi 3D effects or 2.5D kind of effects. There also is, you can get an OpenGL texture and just write some additional code that is not in Flutter to talk straight to that OpenGL texture. But we don't currently have any work ongoing to add, 3D support, no 3D physics engine or anything that we have in our back pocket.
Okay.
Nice. There's a question from Wolf here. He asked, today we have Material for Android and Cupertino for iOS. Do we have Metro UI or Modern UI for Windows or something like that?
You know, I was just talking with someone about that the other day. There's no code written to my knowledge, but given that we are continuing to increase our investments in the web, which is obviously prevalent on Windows, as well as some of our desktop embeddings, I think that it would be a natural evolution that we would need to write some Windows look and feel kind of controls, or at least help to get that kind of effort off the ground. But again, I'm not aware of any code like that existing today, and I have nobody's working on it. But I think that that's a natural thing that would need to come in the future. One of the nice things about Flutter is that it's 100% open source. So, you know, it's either in the code or it isn't. And you guys know almost as much as I do. But yeah.
Sure.
That's nice. Thank you.
Kevin? Okay, Kevin, I think Kevin is off. Next question. When will we have the next Flutter I/O? And do you think we'll have a stable version of Flutter Desktop till then?
So there's a couple separate questions. So we did have a Flutter Live event last year. We are interested in doing future events of some form. We don't know what those will look like yet. The Flutter Live event last year was in many ways sort of an announcement kind of vehicle. The year before that, we had more of a sort of developer summit that was more Dart focused, and Flutter was a lot smaller then. Flutter's has a lot more users now, and we don't really know what the right event venues to do, but we certainly have people thinking about what would be the appropriate kind of things. So I don't have any dates or anything to announce on that. Sure. And then you asked about desktop. So desktop, again, it's all open source. We've tried to be very conservative in our labeling. We've tried to make the things work before we say, okay, hey world, you know, it's ready, it's alpha or whatever. And you see that again occurring with our web, right? We've been working on web for almost about a year now, and we're in sort of a technical preview, I think is the current label. We're working towards similar kinds of labels with desktop, but that's probably going to be a while.
Okay, thanks.
Mic time now. I have another question here from Kelvin. In the future, do you think Flutter for web will compete against React, Vue, Angular, and other frameworks?
I guess I don't spend a lot of time thinking about competing so much as just trying to make sure that we're providing value to users, to developers. I mean, I'm in this game because I have worked some as a web developer before working, on browsers, and I worked on browsers to try and make developers' lives better across the world for years. And I guess, it's interesting to look and see what other people are also doing in the space, but my job is to shoot for what is it the users need? What is it the developers need? How can I help them get their job done better and get home, to do the other things that they want to do besides write iOS and Android apps all day? And that's what I focus on, and it's great to see other people playing in the space, but I'm always targeting the users.
Great. So with that in mind, the next question is, many developers ask for the end of the semicolon. Do you think there's any chance of that happening?
I'm not sure I understood. A semicolon?
Yeah, using semicolon in the code when programming with Dart. Okay.
I know that's been talked about. There's probably some proposals in the Dart language.
Yeah.
There's a repository where all the, again, open source, right? All the Dart language, future-looking discussions, or many of them happen. I know there was some discussions around removing semicolons. I don't believe those are on the current language plan for the near term. There's some complexities that you get in terms of, how you're a parser. So I can't speak authoritatively about those plans, but I could direct you to dart-lang/language where those kinds of discussions are happening. And
Great.
Certainly welcome the participation of the folks in this room and, on the internet at large.
Sorry, I'm getting messed with my mute button. Okay, so does Google think about transform Flutter in the future to take place of Android development? Uh, Nowadays, we have Flutter and native Android with Kotlin or Java. And do you have any plans, or do you from Flutter teams think about to have Flutter in the first place in the future?
For Android itself, I mean, so we talk a lot with folks who are a couple buildings over from us who work on Android all day. I'm not aware of any plans of trying to combine those efforts. We are solving, in many senses, separate problems for separate problem spaces. Folks, I think we see using Flutter when they wish to go to more than one platform, and they see using Android for Android-specific things.
Thank you.
So you think there's always been a market for both of them?
I mean, again, I think that there's there's always more problems to solve, and there's a bunch of really smart folks who work over in those buildings, and again, we work with them and have helped work with them on things like this Jetpack Compose stuff that recently was made open source. As to their future plans, you would have to ask them.
Okay. Is there a chance that Flutter 2.0 will have breaking chains to the point where it's no longer compatible with 1.0, like happened with Angular?
So we do have a breaking change policy, which we publish on our website. We are very cognizant of the fact that every day there are more Flutter projects in existence. There are more Flutter developers in existence. I worked on the web for more than a decade, which had its own set of breaking change policies. The lead architect for Flutter, Ian Hickson, obviously ran the HTML5 spec for many, many years. So we're very aware of the cost of breaking changes. We also think that it's very important that we continue to evolve the platform. So I think that as we continue to make breaking changes, you're going to hear us talk about those. You're going to hear us be upfront about that they're coming, and we're going to be trying to help folks migrate. As to what exact versions might change to what level, that I just don't even know, right, until we get there.
Okay. Balta?
Yeah. All right. In the first year, Flutter had been appeared in many important channels in the world, like Stack Overflow, JetBrains, LinkedIn. Flutter is the main spotlight for mobile development nowadays. What do you think that is the cause of this, the root cause of this? Why does people are choosing Flutter for mobile development?
We certainly do user surveys to try and understand some of this. What I hear people most often report back to me, the first thing is hot reload, that they just like having a much better developer cycle. People report back to me the business value of being able to write from a single code base, have a high quality output, and have that output run on multiple places. And obviously that's an increasing number of places as time goes on. And I think they also report back that they just really like having clean, thought out, designed in 2017 instead of 10 or 20 years ago APIs. So I think those are the three big reasons that I hear. Obviously, there are many other reasons that people like Flutter.
Yeah, my opinion, hot reload is one of the best things that we had in Flutter. It's really awesome. All right.
Right. So Eric, tell us a little bit about how did Flutter and Dart born? How did it happen?
So Dart, I wasn't there for.
Okay.
I was working on the web platform at the time that the Dart team came into existence. I think actually in Denmark by some very smart compiler engineers there and language engineers. But again, I wasn't there. But Flutter, I was there. I was in the room for that. Flutter came to be out of an experiment, actually. So a bunch of the senior folks who worked on the web platform, we had just helped fork Blink away from WebKit about a year before, but we were still not able to move the web platform forward as fast as we wanted to. And we did an experiment where we took some of the core Blink code and we just deleted and deleted and deleted and deleted it and see how fast we could make it go. And after a few days, maybe a week of experimenting, we ran some of our benchmarks. We were continuously running our benchmarks. We ran some of our benchmarks and found that some of them we had moved 20 times faster. And at that, we were like, okay, there's a there. And we went exploring, and it probably took us a year to figure out what we were building, because we initially built a custom elements-based thing, and then we built a JavaScript-based thing, and then we found JavaScript kind of fell over for us, at least at the time. Again, this was 5 years ago, so JavaScript was a different beast then. But in terms of when we made the framework too large, startup time was an issue. And then we found Dart, and Dart was doing other things at the time, but it was a very happy marriage. And out of that, we found things like hot reload, because some really smart Dart engineers who came to us was like, you know what? I bet with this framework and this VM, we could make the developer cycle even more amazing, because we were already pressing on the developer cycle at the time. So that's a very short version of the history. Yeah, it was basically born out of the idea that we just wanted to make an even better web than we could make on the web. And these days, of course, Flutter shares no code with the web, but we believe that we've solved some interesting problems at least.
Yeah, and hot reloaded was a happy coincidence. It's very
very happy. That's okay. There's another question here from Alvaro. Is there any possibility that we had a compiler for WASM, WebAssembly?
I know that was played with. Again, I'm sure there are commits in the open source where you could find this. I think some of the limitations there, I'd have to go look. But I recall there were like some very minor tweaks that needed to be made to WASM to really do Dart well. If I recall correctly, it's just not something that we're currently trying to make work. My understanding is that it is something that is technically possible or nearly technically possible, just not something that we're currently aiming for. I remember when we looked at that, one of the current limitations of WASM is I believe that it's not a quick jump out to get to some of the like core APIs like the JavaScript part. I'm not a WASM expert, but I remember there were some limitations as to why we weren't pursuing that strategy at this moment for Flutter Web. But it is certainly an interesting technology that we will continue to watch, and maybe a future technology we use.
That's nice. Thank you.
So the way Flutter works with web today, do you think this is the definitive way it will work in the future with the web?
I'm pretty confident that that will continue to evolve. That effort, as I said, is barely a year old. At this point in Flutter's history, right? I'm not even sure we had adopted Dart at that equivalent point in time. So that project is still changing a lot. That project is right now in the middle of merging in. You see commits, of us trying to merge the Flutter Web fork and the Flutter fork, and that itself is going to be a process. But I would not at all be surprised if the underlying layers where we implement the Dart UI boundary, so that engine that we've typically implemented in C++, now that we're implementing here again in Dart on the web, that we continue to change how we do that as we continue to talk to other browser teams and figure out what are the right browser calls to try and make, and talk to standards people about like, how are the standards going to evolve? Are there new things coming in the pipeline that we could maybe use here? I'm sure that's going to continue to change.
Okay.
That's nice. There are two questions here, but I think that they were already answered regarding the fluent design for Windows UI, UWP, and tests for Flutter for Web, that I think we most answered these questions. Regarding state management, that we discuss a lot here. There's not just one way to manage the state of a Flutter application. And we talked a lot of state management, dependency injection, and other things, but we do not see any standard from Flutter team. Do you plan to have some sort of guide for this kind of situation? You want to make some state management do this way or start this way, and then you do whatever you want. Do you have any plans for that?
So I think that you're starting to see our attitudes change there. So Flutter started out as trying to build a UI toolkit. How do you paint pixels super fast? And then as we sort of brought that to developers, we realized that developers don't necessarily know what a UI toolkit is, and they don't even want a UI toolkit. They want a broader, bigger thing. Like what is the platform, or what is the whole set of stuff around? Because they need to do more than just draw pixels, right? And so I think we worked with some of our very, very early customers, and they developed a variety of state management solutions, which you've seen us publish and talk about, and people get talks about. And the community, as it's grown up, has found other state management solutions. You've seen us start to talk a bit more about provider, which is something that we've worked on with some of these early customers and community members. I think we're starting to form more opinions here, but again, the current sort of core Flutter team is mostly really good at making fast pixels and a beautiful UI toolkit, and we don't have as much expertise in the this is state management kind of thing. So I think that you'll continue to see our thoughts evolve there, but I don't know that there will ever be an official this is the one true way. In part because just state management is a big part of how you do an app. In terms of it's part of the big decision making about what app are you making and what is this app going to do. And so I'm not sure that a one size fits all solution is really ever valued, but I do think we could be more strong in saying this is what we might recommend you start with. And I think you're starting to see that tone change.
That's nice. Thank you.
So Jacob sent us a question to you. So how does the Flutter team sees the developer communities in Brazil?
I mean, I only have positive thoughts. I have personally never been to Brazil, although entertainingly, we had a student visit us from Brazil for a year when I was growing up. So I actually have ties to Brazil, despite having never been. But I just watched the Brazil usage graphs just go up, day over day. You guys clearly have a lot of excited Flutter developers down there. But I don't myself speak Portuguese. We have a variety of Spanish-speaking individuals on the team. I don't know if we have any Portuguese-speaking individuals, but yes, we're very excited and happy to see all the Brazil-based excitement, and we would love to know how we can continue to help support that.
Great, that's good to hear. And do you think there's any possibility of bringing an event like Flutter I/O to Brazil?
I think anything is always a possibility. I think that we, as the communities continue to develop, we may see a need to do more regional-based events. I think that we're still pretty early days.
That's nice. There's another question here. How Flutter will be used in Fuchsia?
So
is there any sneak peek for us?
I don't have any sneak peek. That again is not sort of mine to talk about. But I think again you can read the code because much of Fuchsia is certainly open source, and we have talked with that team for a long time, and you can see a lot of Flutter usage there.
Nice. Okay. Is there any other question here? No, there's another one here. Regarding Dart for backend, and I don't think we have a tool or a framework now for build something for backend with Dart, but not sure how to ask this question because it's regarding backend of Flutter. Anyway,
I mean, I can talk a little bit about. We certainly see more and more teams that start with Flutter. You know, they sort of come for the Flutter and they stay for the Dart, right? They start with Flutter and they're like, wow, this Dart thing is awesome. You know, I'll write a bunch of command line scripts in Dart, or I'll start to write my server backend in Dart, or I'll write some microservice for my server backend in Dart. And we're seeing that more just in the general public, and we're also just seeing that more at Google. That's not an area that my team, the Flutter team, focuses on, but there are aspects of the Dart team that are starting to feel that out. Figure out how can we support that community. But again, right now we're all just kind of trying to hold on as the Flutter rocket ship, goes who knows where. Keep our hats on.
Yeah, that's nice. I saw a project using Dart on the back end, but I did not remember the framework that they used. That's awesome. Anyway, for some teams that are beginning now, sometimes it's very productive to have the same language on the back end and the front end on the mobile.
Yeah.
For example, like we have with Angular TypeScript, we have the Nest framework on the back end, which uses the same structure of Angular, so it's more productive.
And I think you're going to see that with Dart too, because Dart, one of Dart's many superpowers is this extremely flexible compiler toolchain. And part of the way that you see Dart being used on the command line and being used in servers is because it has this great JIT VM, right? And because it has this AOT, and there's now the ability to AOT for x64, right? And so you have all this flexibility, and you can build really fast stuff that doesn't have to just run on a mobile phone. I just think the frameworks and the tool chains are not. There just hasn't been as much developed there. There's some certainly, but.
And do you see any possibility of having a dependency manager like npm for Flutter?
So we have a package manager, and that's pub. There are probably subtleties in that question that I don't understand in terms of all the amazing things npm probably does and pub doesn't do. Pub is certainly an area that we are aware we need to invest more in, all the aspects of pub, the website, the sort of backend analysis, the client. And again, we're mostly just trying to keep our hats on at the moment. But I would be very interested in hearing from the questioner again via an issue or via an email or whatever, what sorts of things they would love to see from npm in pub or similar systems relating to Flutter.
Great. Calvin sent another question. Do you have any release date for Flutter 2.0?
I don't, but I will say that all of our release, so our roadmap is public. It's on our GitHub, where we talk about the things that we're planning to work on this year. Our release schedule is public. Now, it's not that we have a specific day that we release on, but we talk about how we try to release quarterly for stables. We try to release monthly for betas. We try to release daily, effectively, for devs. And master, obviously, is changed every few minutes. But so you have a lot of the same information I do. As to when a 2.0 would come, I think that's probably a discussion we'd have to have with our product people, because they have opinions on that kind of thing, and I haven't had those conversations yet.
Nice. All right, let me check more questions here. There's a good topic here. Jacob, who is hearing us here, did a great job creating a GitHub project called Slidey, which provides a structure for your Flutter project. If you don't know how to begin, you can just use Slidey to generate your first Flutter project with some kind of pattern to follow.
Cool. I saw something on Twitter about it, but I hadn't actually seen the project or the code yet.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So we have 1 minute before our deadline, right? Well, we are very happy to have you here to do this interview with you. Do you have any advices or any friendly message you want to say to developers of Flutter in Brazil?
I think my biggest message would we'd love to hear from you, right? Via GitHub, via our mailing lists. Like, we're just building this to make developers' lives better, and we won't build the right things if you don't tell us what to build, right? And it's not actually also just that we do the building, right? It's an open source project. We try hard to make it easy to contribute to. I suspect there's a lot more we could do, and we would love to engage with you in that process. So we'd love to hear from you.
Sure, great. Balta, you want to say anything?
No, I think that was a great interview. I just want to say thank you to Eric for having this time with us. I think that his time is very short, and he dedicated to the community. I want to say thank you for Flutter team to hear the community also, to spend this time with the community. I think this is very important for us to know that we are being here, and just want to say thank you.
And thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Eric. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Hey, take care all.